Book of Heaven, Volume 23, Part 14. February 9th, 1928. The Sovereign Queen of Heaven, Reflector of Jesus. Pleasures of Jesus when one asks for his fiat. How Jesus gathered all goods and consumed all evils. How he ignited the stake within himself. Continuing to follow the acts of Jesus, done in his divine will when he was on earth, I was following mother and son when they fled to Egypt. And I thought to myself, how beautiful it must have been to see the dear little baby in the arms of his divine mamma. Though he was so little, enclosing the eternal fiat within himself, he enclosed heaven and earth. Everything came out from him as the Creator, and everything hung upon him. And the Sovereign Queen, transfused in the little Jesus by virtue of the same fiat that animated them, formed the reflector of Jesus, his echo, his very life. How many hidden beauties they possessed! How many varieties of heavens, more beautiful than what can be seen above our horizon! How many more refulgent suns they contained! And yet no one could see anything. Nothing appeared other than 3 poor fugitives. Jesus, my love, I want to follow, step by step, the steps of my celestial mamma. And as she walks, I want to animate the blades of grass, the atoms of the earth, and make you feel my I love you under her soles. I want to animate all the light of the sun, and as it shines on your face, I want it to bring you my I love you. All the waves of the wind, its caresses, let all say to you, I love you. I am the one who, in your fiat, brings you the warmth of the sun to warm you, the waves of the wind to caress you, its whistling to speak to you and say, Dear little one, let everyone know your divine will. Let it come out from within your little humanity, that it may take its dominion and form its kingdom in the midst of creatures. But while my mind was wandering after Jesus, and I would be too long if I wanted to say everything, my highest and only good, Jesus, moved in my interior, and all goodness told me, my daughter, my mamma and I were like 2 twins, born of the same labor, because we had but one will that gave us life. The divine fiat placed all our acts in common, in such a way that the sun was reflected in her, and the mamma was reflected in the sun. So the kingdom of the divine will had its full force, its perfect dominion within us. And as we were fleeing to Egypt, we carried the divine volition as though strolling throughout those regions, and we felt its great sorrow, for it was not reigning in creatures. And looking at the centuries, we felt the great joy of its kingdom that it was to form in their midst. And oh, how pleasing to us did your repeated refrains in the wind, in the sun, in the water, under our steps. Reach us upon the wings of our Fiat. I love you, I love you. Let your kingdom come. It was our echo that we could hear in you, as we wanted nothing but the divine will to reign and be the conqueror of all. Therefore, even from that time, we loved our tiny little one, who asked for and wanted but what we ourselves wanted. Then I continued to think about everything that my sweet Jesus had done while being on earth. And he added, "My daughter, when I came upon earth, I looked at all centuries, past, present, and future, in order to gather within my humanity everything good and upright that could be done by all generations, so as to place on it the seal and the confirmation of good. I destroyed nothing of what was good. On the contrary, I wanted to enclose it within myself, to give it divine life, and adding the good that was missing, and that I did, to complete all the goods of human creatures. Upon the wings of the centuries, I went to human creatures, to give my complete work to each one of them. In the same way, I also gathered all evils in order to consume them, and by dint of sorrows and pains that I wanted to suffer, I ignited the stake within my own humanity on which to burn all evils, wanting to feel each pain, so as to make arise again all goods opposite the evils, to make the human generations be born again to new life. And just as I did everything, suffered everything, and consumed everything, in order to form all possible and imaginable remedies for all the redeemed ones, so as to then dispose them to receive the great good of my will reigning in their midst, so you, in order to prepare my kingdom for creatures, must enclose all that is holy and good. And by dint of pains, you must consume all evils, to make the life of my divine will be born again in the midst of creatures. You must be my echo, in whom I must form the deposit from which the kingdom of my Fiat must arise. Follow me, step by step, and you will feel the life, the heartbeat, the happiness of this kingdom that I contain within me, and that wants to come out in order to reign in the midst of creatures. And my love for it is so great that if I allowed the infernal enemy to penetrate into Eden, I will not allow him to set foot in the Eden of the kingdom of the Fiat. And this is why I permitted that he draw near me in the desert, to debilitate him and put an end to his steps, and to close the way for him, that he might not dare to enter. Don't you yourself feel how your presence terrorizes the enemy, and he takes flight so as not to see you? It is the strength of my victory that hurls him down, and feeling confused, he flees. Everything is prepared. There is nothing left but to make it known. February 12th, 1928. Laments of the Soul. How Jesus enclosed within himself all the acts rejected by creatures and formed his kingdom. How one who possesses the divine Fiat possesses the bilocating power and can give to God as her own what belongs to God. My poor mind keeps moving around within the endless boundaries of the supreme Fiat, and my poor heart is in the nightmare of the harrowing pain of the privation of my beloved Jesus. Hours are centuries. Nights are interminable without him. And since it is a divine pain that swoops down on my little soul, its immensity drowns me, crushes me, and I feel all the weight of an eternal pain. Oh, holy God, how can you do this? You take away from me that very life that you want me to possess. How can this be? You put me in the impossibility to live, and live dying, because the font of your life is not in me. Ah, Jesus, come back. Do not abandon me to myself. I cannot live without life. Jesus, Jesus, how much it costs me to have known you. How many tearings you have made to my human life to give me yours. And now I live suspended. My own life I can find no more, because with your stratagems, you have stolen it from me. Yours, I just barely feel, but as though torn by the strong eclipse of the light of your will. So everything is over for me, and I am forced to resign myself, and to feel your life through the rays of light, through the reflections that your adorable will brings me. I can endure no more. Jesus, come back to her whom you so much loved, and you told you loved, and have now had the strength to abandon. Come back once and for all, and decide not to leave me any more. But while I was pouring out my sorrow, he moved in my interior, and mitigating the light that eclipsed him, he stretched his arms toward me, clasping me tightly, and told me, "My daughter, poor little one of mine, courage. It is my will that wants its first place in you. But I must not decide not to leave you. My decision was taken when you decided not to leave me any more. Then there was a stealing of each other's lives, I yours, and you mine, with this difference, that before you would see me without the eclipse of the light of my Fiat, as it was as though enclosed inside of me. And now, wanting to take life in you, it has overflowed outside of me, and by locating itself, it has enclosed my humanity inside its light. And therefore you feel my life through the reflections of its light. So why do you fear that I might leave you? Now you must know that my humanity redid within itself all the acts rejected by creatures, that my will, in giving itself to them, wanted them to do. I redid them all, and I deposited them within myself. in order to form its kingdom, waiting for the propitious time to release them from myself and deposit them in creatures as the foundation of this kingdom. Had I not done this, the kingdom of my will could not take place in the midst of creatures, because I alone, as man and God, could make up for man and receive into myself the whole operating of a divine will that creatures were to receive and do, and communicate it through myself to them. In fact, in Eden, the two wills, the human and the divine, remained as though scowling at each other, because the human opposed the divine. All other offenses were the consequence. Therefore, first I had to redo within myself all the acts opposed to the divine fiat, and let it lay its kingdom in me. If I did not reconcile these two wills scowling at each other, how could I form the redemption? Therefore, in everything I did on earth, the first act was to reestablish the harmony, the order between the two wills, in order to form my kingdom. The redemption was the consequence of this. And so it was necessary to remove the consequences of the evil that the human will had produced, and therefore I gave most efficacious remedies, so as to then manifest the great good of the kingdom of my will. So the reflections of its light do nothing but bring you the acts that my humanity contains, so that everything might be divine will in you. Therefore be attentive in following it, and do not fear. After this I was continuing my round in the creation, to give to my Creator all the homages of the divine qualities that each created thing contains. Because since everything came out of the divine fiat, consequently it maintains their life. Even more, it is the primary act of each created thing. But while I was doing this, I thought to myself, the created things are not mine. How can I say, by right, I offer you the homages of the light of the sun, the glory of the starry heavens, and so forth? But while I was thinking of this, my always lovable Jesus, moving in my interior, told me, "My daughter, one who possesses my will and lives in it, can say by right, the sun is mine, the heavens, the sea, everything is mine, and as mine I bring everything around the divine majesty, to give him the glory that each created thing contains." In fact, is all creation perhaps not the work of my omnipotent fiat? Does its palpitating life, its vital warmth, its incessant motion that moves everything, orders and harmonizes everything, not flow within it, as if the whole creation were one single act? So, for one who possesses my divine will as life, heavens, sun, seas, and everything are not things extraneous to her, but everything is her own, just as everything belongs to my fiat. In fact, she is nothing other than a birth from it, that by possessing it has all rights over all the births from it, which is the whole creation. Therefore, by right and in truth, she can say to her Creator, I offer you all the homages of the light of the sun, with all its effects, symbol of the eternal light, the glory of the immensity of the heavens, and so with all the rest. To possess my will is divine life that the soul carries out within herself. So everything that comes out of her contains power, immensity, light, love. We feel in her our bilocating power. That bilocating us places all our divine qualities in attitude, and she offers them to us as her own, as divine homages, worthy of that divine fiat that knows how to and can bilocate itself in order to call back the creature to the first act of creation, which is, let us make man in our image and likeness. February 20th, 1928. How one who must enclose a good in order to give it to creatures must enclose the whole of that good within himself. This happened to the Virgin and to our Lord. What unity means. The privations of Jesus become longer, and I live only at the mercy of the divine fiat that has constituted itself life of my little soul. It seems to me that my beloved Jesus, entrusting me to it, hides behind the veils of its light, only to spy and stand at attention to see whether I always follow his adorable will. Oh God, what pain to be with an immensity of light, and being unable to find the way and move my steps to find him whom I love, who formed me, and who has told me so many truths that I feel within me like many divine lives palpitating that make me comprehend who he is, whom I want and do not find. Ah, Jesus, Jesus, come back. How can you do this? You make me feel your heartbeat in my heart, and you hide? But while I was pouring myself out, I thought to myself, maybe Jesus does not find, either in me or in others, the dispositions to receive the life of more of his truths. And so as not to let these lives remain suspended, he keeps silent and he hides. But while I was thinking this, my highest good Jesus moved within my interior in the act of moving his steps to come out of me, and he told me, poor little daughter of mine, you have become lost in the light and cannot find him whom you search for with so much love. The light forms huge waves before you and forms the barriers to finding me. But don't you know that I myself am the light? I myself am the life, the heartbeat that you feel? How could my will ever have its life in you if your Jesus were not in you, giving the field to carry out the operating of my will in your soul? Therefore, calm yourself. Now you must know that one who must be the bearer of a good must centralize within himself all the fullness of that good. Otherwise the good would not find the way to go out. Now, since I must centralize in you the kingdom of my will, nothing of it must be missing, because its light disposes you to receive all the truths necessary to form its kingdom. And if the other creatures are not disposed to receive all the lives of the truths of the fiat, At the most, I will not give you the capacity to manifest them, as happens many times. But to you, as the depository, nothing must be lacking. The same happened in the Queen of Heaven. Since she was to be the depository of the incarnate Word, who was to give me to the human generations, I centralized in her all the goods of the redeemed ones, and all that was needed in order to be able to receive the life of a God. Therefore, the height of my Mama possesses the sovereignty over all creatures and over each act and good that they can do, in such a way that, if they think in a saintly way, she is the channel of holy thoughts, and therefore has sovereignty over them. If they speak, if they operate, if they walk in a saintly way, the origin of all this descends from the Virgin, and therefore she has the right and sovereignty over words, steps, and works. There is no good that is done that does not descend from her, because since she was the primary cause of the incarnation of the Word, it was right that she be the channel of all goods and have the rights of sovereignty over everything. The same happened also with me. Since I was to be the Redeemer of all, I was to contain within myself all the goods of redemption. I am the channel, the font, the sea, from which come all the goods of the redeemed ones. And I possess by nature the right of sovereign over all the acts and goods that creatures do. Our reigning is not like the reigning of creatures, who dominate and reign over the external acts of them, and not even all of the external acts, but know nothing about the internal ones, nor do they have the right of sovereignty, because the life, the thought, the word of their subjects does not come from them. On the other hand, from me comes the life of all the internal and external operating of creatures. Therefore, creatures should be acts, such that the act of my celestial mother and mine hangs over each act that they do, and as sovereigns, they form it, direct it, and give it life. After this, I continued along my round in the divine will, and as I united myself to the unity that my first father Adam possessed before sinning, my sweet Jesus added, "My daughter, you have not comprehended well what unity means. Unity means centralization and origin of all the acts of creatures, past, present, and future. So before sinning, when he possessed our unity, Adam enclosed within his thoughts the unity of all the thoughts of creatures, the unity of all words, works, and steps. Therefore I would find in him, in my unity, the origin, the continuation, and the end of all the acts of the human generations. In my unity, he enclosed everyone and possessed everything. So, my daughter, as you rise to that same unity that he left, you take his place, and placing yourself in the origin of everyone and of everything, you enclose within yourself the very acts of Adam, with the whole retinue of all the acts of creatures. To live in my will means I am the origin of all. From me descends everything, just as everything descends from the divine Fiat. So I am the thought, the word, the work, and the step of all. I take everything, and everything I bring to my Creator. It is understood that Adam was supposed to possess and enclose everyone, had he not withdrawn from our will, and had he always lived in our unity. And if it were so, the human generations would all have lived in our will. So one would have been the will, one the unity, one the echo of all, placing everything in common, so that each one would have enclosed everything within himself. You have reached the end of the Book of Heaven, Volume 23, Part 14. Fiat.